All right, pre-algebra students, this is Mr. Underkoffler, and we are going to be going through the guided notes on adding integers. We're going to start by doing it visually. As you can see here, follow along with me. It says number lines can be used to model addition symbol problems. When I say addition symbol problems, I mean there is literally an addition symbol in between the problems, or in between the numbers in the problem. That's what I mean by addition symbol problems. And integers are just whole numbers and their negative counterparts, as I had typed up here above. We're basically going to follow 4 simple rules for using number lines with addition symbol problems. We're going to start at 0. Positive numbers will go to the right. That should make sense because positives do increase as you go to the right. Negative numbers are going to go to the left. Again, that should make sense. And wherever we end up, we are going to put a dot in the number line at that final answer. So you can see I have number 1 and number 2 already done for you. Let's quickly take a look at them. We had -7 plus -4 on number 1. You'll see I started at 0. Then I went to the left. Why? Because -7 is a negative number. That goes to the left. And then at the end of that first number, that is where I start the second number. And I apologize for not clarifying that up here. The second number will not start from 0. It will start at the end of the first number's bar. And so -4, since that's negative, I went left 4 additional spaces. That puts me at -11. So I write the final answer underneath and circle it to make me happy, and I'm done. Problem number 2, it said Clinton Portis lost 5 yards. We should know a loss is a negative in football, but then he gained 8 yards in the next play, so that's going to be a +8. And then it says what were his total yards lost or gained. So once again, I'm going to start at 0. The -5 will go left 5. The +8, though, should go right 8. Now, whenever your bars overlap, you're going to want to make your second bar higher up, so that way it's not, crossing over the one you already made, and that would be really messy. So +8, remember the second number starts at the end of the first number's bar. So the second number does not start at 0. The second number is going to start at the end of that first number's bar, and then that's when I go to the right 8 spaces, because +8, you go right 8. So that leaves me at 3, and then I have to answer the question. The question did ask what were his total yards lost or gained, and so that's why my final answer says his total yards were 3 yards gained, because obviously a positive in terms of football yardage would be yards gained. All right, so now that I've talked you through numbers 1 and 2, let's see if you can do number 3, part A. Let's just do part A for now. Make sure you can interpret the word problem. Write an addition symbol problem using integers for the transaction that's described. So hit pause real quick on the video, do part A only, do that now. Okay, I hope you've done that. You've read part A. It said that Eva deposited. Now, deposit in money means you're going to put it in. In fact, that's going to be a positive value for your bank account. And the word depositive, forgive me, I almost said it wrong, but it actually proves my point. The word deposited sounds like positive, and so that should be an easy way for you to remember this. That's going to be a +12. And then a withdrawal, that's taking money out of the bank. All right, so a withdrawal is going to be taking it out of your bank account. That's going to make your bank account lower, and so that should be a -20. Since the direction said an addition problem, we have to put plus in between. Now, you'll notice I put that -20 in parentheses. Let me make this clear. These are not absolute value bars. Absolute value bars, which we had on the other packet of guided notes just not too long ago, absolute value bars would be straight up and down. These are not absolute value bars. These are parentheses. They are curved. But I'll be honest with you, the parentheses really don't matter when there's only one number inside. So you might be like, Mr. Underkoffler, why did you put that -20 in parentheses? In fact, you might have noticed that back on problem number 1, I put the -4 in parentheses. The reason that textbooks do this across the world is because they don't want you to think that this dash is a minus. They want you to know that this is actually a -20, not a subtraction symbol followed by 20. And so textbooks and worksheets across the world will put negative numbers, if they come to the right of like plus, minus, times, or divide, they'll put that negative number in parentheses. I will give you another option. If you don't like writing those parentheses because they kind of don't really matter in the grand scheme of mathematics here, then you can actually just put the negative sign higher up, in front of that 20. That would be acceptable by me. I'll actually kind of interchange on the second page which way I write it. Sometimes I'll put the negative in parentheses, other times I won't. So just be prepared. I'm going to kind of interchange which way I do it just to get you used to both methods. Okay, part B. Let's see if you can take what you learned from numbers 1 and 2 and do the drawing of the bars above the number line on your own. So hit pause on the video, do part B on your own. All right, I hope you've done that. Let's see how you did. I hope you started at 0, and then we have positive 12. That should go to the right 12. You might have noticed I'm always labeling my bars back on number 1 and 2, so that would be a good idea to do that here as well. If you forgot to do that, just do it now real quick as I'm going over it. The second number does not start at 0. The second number starts at the end of the first number's bar. And since it's going to be a negative 20, which goes to the left instead of to the right, I'm going to put this a little bit higher up so that way it doesn't get messy, going overlapping on my positive 12 bar. So negative 20, I'm going to go to the left 20. Now, I know the counting could be annoying here, so there is a trick. If you think about this, the first 12 spaces that you would go to the left would take you back to 0, wouldn't it? And so you just got to ask yourself, well, how many spaces more do I have to go to make a full 20 spaces to the left? Well, 12 and 8 would make 20, wouldn't they? So that would be 8 remaining spaces to go to the left, and that is why you're going to end up at negative 8. And so we should probably write that final answer somewhere. And let's put the answer to the problem and say, what's the balance of the two transactions? So we're talking money here in a bank. So the balance would be negative $8. You can write that somewhere, circle it if you would like. That's the final answer to number 3. All right, let's see if you can do part A and B of number 4 on your own. Hit pause on the video. Let's see how you did. All right, I hope you did part A, at least part A on your own. Let's see how you did. It said the temperature at noon was negative 4 degrees, so that's going to be negative 4. The problem said you must write an addition problem. That's part A, write an addition problem. So you have no choice. You have to put plus. Now, I know that might have confused some of you. Some of you might have been like, Mr. Underkoffler, when it drops 5 degrees, that made me think subtracting 5. And you know what? You actually could have written that way if the directions didn't say to write it as an addition problem. So how do I then incorporate the idea of dropping 5 degrees if I'm forced to put plus? Well, it should be a negative 5. That's the other way of thinking dropping 5 degrees. If you don't want to write the parentheses, you don't have to. You could put the negative sign a little bit higher up, like I was showing you over here on the alternate way of doing part A of number 3. So you could make that negative sign higher up here as well if you don't want to draw the parentheses. All right, if you didn't do the number line yet on part B, now's the time to do it and hit pause on the video. Or maybe you messed up, because if your part A was wrong, then obviously your part B is going to be wrong. So if you have to fix it real quick, hit pause on the video and then we'll see how you did. Okay, I hope you already did part B on your own, and now you're ready to see how you did. Since these are both negatives, you're going to go left both times. So you're going to go left 4 spaces from 0. And then you have to go left 5 additional spaces. I hope you didn't accidentally get tricked and thought you were going to stop at negative 5. Negative 5 means you're going to go left 5 spaces from the negative 4. So that's why you end up at negative 9. And then we have to write the final answer to the problem, because it said to find out the temperatures. Real life problems should have real life answers. That's why the word degrees is required, unless you want to put the tiny little O on the top right of the negative 9 for the symbol of degrees. That would be acceptable as well. All right, I bet some of you might have realized that there actually is another way of getting the answers to these problems without using number lines. You might have realized that when both numbers are negative, like we have here on this problem, you could actually just add in your head, right? 4 plus 5 would give you 9, and then you would just have to throw the negative in front for your final answer. That also worked on problem number 1. Both numbers were negative. You could just add in your head, and that would, give you the 11, and then you just keep it negative. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm actually going to give you these shortcuts here at the top of the second page. Here's what I just got done telling you the past minute. If both numbers are negative with plus in between, you can just add in your head. You're actually adding their absolute values, which means like, just the positives. You're taking away the negative signs. You're temporarily just adding in your head their absolute values. If you have to do it off to the side, if it's tricky addition, you could. Totally up to you. So you're going to add in your head if it's a negative plus a negative, and then you got to keep the final answer as a negative. And so take a look at number 1. I know it's already typed up for you. We clearly have a negative plus a negative, right? Here's the negative. Here's the other number being negative. And so what I did is I added in my head or off to the side. You're just adding their absolute values. You're dropping the negatives temporarily, adding in your head or off to the side. But then you're keeping the final answer as negative. Don't make your SideWorks answer your final answer. Make sure you put the final answer underneath the original problems to hopefully force yourself to make sure you're putting the correct sign, in this case negative, on that final answer. And then here's another one, let me lead you through. We have a negative plus a negative. You can see here I'm not putting parentheses around the negative number. I'm putting the negative sign higher up just to point that out to you. So when you have a negative plus a negative, like it says at the top, you're going to add in your head. So this would give you 132, but the final answer should stay negative, just like we saw back here, with these, when we did use stuff above the number lines. 2 negatives are going to keep you way further in the left on the negatives, and so that's why both number 1 and number 2 have final answers of negative answers. But you might have realized the rule is very different when you have a positive and a negative. Like back on number 3, when we had a positive number and a negative number, then they went in opposite directions, didn't they? You're not going to add in your head on those problems, are you? You're going to subtract in your head. 20 take away 12 would give you the 8, wouldn't it? And then you kind of had to decide, well, who's the longer bar? If the longer bar was negative, then the answer is going to be negative. But back on number 2, the longer bar was the positive, and so the answer ended up being positive. So how can we explain that without using stuff above number lines? Well, again, go back to the second page. Here's the scenario. When you have a negative plus a positive, the answer could be positive, it could be negative, it depends. It's actually going to depend on which number has the bigger absolute value. That's kind of like saying which number would have the longer bar when you were looking at it above number lines. And so like I was saying on problems 3 and problem 2, you wouldn't add in your head on this scenario, would you? You would subtract in your head. And so that's what I'm telling you right here. When you have a negative and a positive, they're different signs. You will find the difference. Did you catch that little play on words there? Different signs, you'll find the difference. The word difference in mathematics means to subtract. So I'm trying to give you little helpful ways of remembering this. And so that's exactly what I did on number 3 and number 4. Check it out. We have a positive 27 and a negative 56. I'm going to subtract in my head, or if I have to, off to the side. Now, one thing I should point out real quick. When you subtract in your head or off to the side, you're going to have to put the number with the bigger absolute value on top. I hope you see that's what I did. And remember, we're subtracting their absolute values. So we're dropping the negative signs temporarily, and in our side work, we're just subtracting with the bigger absolute value on top. If it's tricky and you have to do borrowing like I did here, then I recommend doing it off to the side. If it's not tricky subtraction, then do it in your head. All right, so that would give us 29. But will that be a positive 29 or a negative 29? It depends, right? That's what it says up here at the top. It depends. It depends on which number has the bigger absolute value. Or if you thought of it visually, it's the number who would have the longer bar, right? That would determine whether the answer is going to be positive or negative. So on number 3, the longer bar, or the bigger absolute value number, would be the negative 56, wouldn't it? And that's why the answer is negative. On number 4, we have a positive 82 and a negative 50. Again, they're different signs, so we're going to find the difference. We're going to subtract in our head. That would give us 32. Now, why is the answer positive? Because 82 would have the longer bar, if you think of it visually. With official vocabulary, I'll say 82 has the bigger absolute value. That's why the final answer is a positive. You'll see I put a little tiny positive symbol. You don't have to put a positive symbol. If you just want to write it as plain old 32, like we normally see positive numbers, that's totally fine, okay? All right, let me walk you through a couple problems here. Let's do these together. Pencils in your hand. Let's do number 5 and 6. You will see these problems are the kind of problems where both numbers have the same sign. They are both negative. So we're looking up here at the rule on the top left. Negative plus negative, we're going to add. So let's add in our head. 16 plus 73 would be 89. What's the final answer going to be? Well, a negative plus a negative is going to keep you in the negatives. So that's negative 89. Number 6, once again, we have two numbers that are both the same sign. They're both negative. So just like I said at the top, when that situation happens, you're going to add their absolute values in your head or maybe off to the side. I'm going to do this one off to the side because 8 plus 3 is 11. I carry the 1. If you can do that in your head, that's cool, but I did it off to the side. Now, the final answer is not the answer from the side work. Remember, in my side work, I'm not putting the negative signs, am I? I'm adding their absolute values just temporarily. That gives me 61, but the final answer, which you should always write underneath the original problem, will be a negative 61 because, like it said at the top, when you're adding a negative plus a negative, the answer will still be negative. If you don't believe me, you could look back at the problems we did on the first page. Two negatives definitely throw you further to the left on the number line, don't they, into the negative. So a negative plus a negative will be negative. If that surprises you, if you think you heard somewhere in life that two negatives make a positive, I'll give you a little spoiler alert here. With multiplication and division, the rules will change, and that'll be in a future lesson. Two negatives will make a positive when we get to multiplication and division. But don't worry about that for now. We're not doing multiplication and division today. We're doing addition. So bottom line, just like we saw on these number line problems, a negative plus a negative will put you further into the negatives. All right, let's look at number 7 and 8. Let's do these together. Pencils in your hand. We had two numbers with different signs here, don't we? We have a negative 66, but the 14 is not negative, it's positive. So two numbers with different signs. We're going to find the difference. We're going to subtract in our head or maybe off to the side if we have to. That's going to give me 52. Now, why is the answer negative? You have to ask yourself which of the two numbers on the original problem had the bigger absolute value. Well, that would have been the negative 66. And that's why the negative wins, so to speak. And the final answer is going to be negative. Problem number 8. Once again, we have two numbers with different signs. The 7 was negative, but the 123 is positive, different signs. So we're going to find the difference. And this might be wise to do off to the side. Remember, the bigger absolute value number will always go on top when you are subtracting in your side work. So this takes some borrowing. I get 116. Ask yourself, should the answer be positive 116 or should the final answer be a negative? Well, who had the bigger absolute value? It's definitely the positive 123. So the answer is positive. If you don't want to put a tiny little positive symbol like I did, you don't have to. You can just write plain old 116. All right, now that I have led you through 4 problems, actually I talked you through 8 problems to be technical about it, then I think you should be ready to do the next set of problems on your own. So hit pause on the video, use the rules at the top of the page. If you want to think of it visually like we did on the first page, you could, but I don't want you to draw number lines. I want you to use pretty much the rules I taught you at the top of the first page. So the top of the second page. Hit pause on the video, do these problems 9 through 17 on your own. Do that now. All right. All right, I hope you did these problems on your own. Let's see how you did. Problem number 9, we had two numbers that were both negative, right? The 9 and the 11 are both negative. When they are same signs, you will add in your head. So I hope that's what you did. That's going to give you 20, but it's going to stay negative. A negative plus a negative will stay in the negatives. But number 10 is different. Number 10, we had a negative 9, but the 11 is positive. So when they're different signs, you find the difference, just like we saw at the top right of this page. And so you're going to subtract in your head. Why is the answer positive 2? Because the number on the original problem that had the bigger absolute value was the positive 11. So the answer will be positive. If you don't want to put the tiny little positive symbol, you don't have to. That is totally up to you. Number 11, again, we have two numbers with different signs. The 9 was positive, but the 11 was negative. So just like you did on number 10, subtracting your head, that would give you 2. But this time, the number with the bigger absolute value was the negative 11. And so the final answer should be negative. Problem number 12, two numbers with different signs. I'm not going to keep highlighting this for you. I think you can see this. So since they're different signs, you will find the difference. Subtracting your head, that would give you 57. Should the answer be positive or negative? Since the negative 87 has a bigger absolute value than the positive number, the negative wins, so to speak, and it's going to be negative 57. Number 13, both numbers here are negative. When you have a negative plus a negative, you will add in your head, and the final answer will be negative, just like we saw on the top left of this page. So add in your head, you'll get 117. The final answer should still be negative. By the way, if I talk too fast and you need to skip back 10 seconds to hear the explanation more than once, please make sure that's something you can easily do on a pre-recorded video. Problem number 14. We have two numbers that have different signs. The 28 is positive, but the 34 is negative. That is the scenario that I have highlighted in green on the top right of the page. You're going to subtract in your head. That would give you 6. Should it be positive or negative? Well, which number had the bigger absolute value, the positive guy or the negative guy? Well, it's clearly the negative number that has the bigger absolute value. So the answer is going to be negative. Problem number 15. Once again, we have two numbers with different signs. When they're different signs, you find the difference, subtracting your head, or maybe off to the side if you had to. That's going to give you, not 100. It's going to give you 43, not 143. The 100 take away the other 100 makes it just, 0 100, so to speak. So it's going to be 43. Should the answer be positive or negative? It should be positive because the original two numbers, the one with the bigger absolute value was the positive guy, and so that makes the final answer positive. If you don't want to put the tiny little positive symbol, you don't have to. Number 16, both numbers are negative, so they are the same sign. You will add in your head or off to the side. That's going to give you 265, but remember the answer has to stay negative when both numbers were negatives. And number 17. They have different signs, don't they? The 72 was negative, but the 26 was positive. Therefore, you should subtract in your head or off to the side. And I hope you don't forget that whenever you do that, the bigger absolute value would go on top and the smaller absolute value would go underneath. So that way it's like old school elementary subtraction. This one would take some borrowing, wouldn't it? You borrow from the 7, make it 6, the 2 becomes a 12. Anyway, you guys know how to do that. That would give you 46. Now, should it be positive or negative? It should be negative because the bigger absolute value number from the original problem was the negative, and so the negative wins, so to speak. That is going to give you negative 46. All right, at the bottom of the page, we're changing the game just a little bit. We're throwing more than just two numbers into the mix, 3 or 4 numbers. Now, here's the deal with these problems. Listen carefully. We all know the rules are different as to when you have a negative plus a negative or when you have a negative plus a positive. The rules are very different, aren't they? When it's a negative plus a negative, you add. But when it's a negative plus a positive, you subtract. And so, as much as I wish that I could do 3 numbers all at the same time, that would be a horrible idea when they don't all have the same sign. Take a look at this. We have 24 and 46 are both negatives, but the 3 is not negative, it's positive. And so this is why you can't do all 3 at the same shot. Because when you have a negative plus a positive, you subtract in your head. But when you have a negative plus a negative, you add in your head. So you can't do all 3 at one shot unless if all 3 of them were negatives, you could just add them all together at one time. Or if all 3 of them were positives, well, of course, that'd be like an elementary school problem, then you could do all 3 at one shot. But when they are a combination of positives and negatives mixed together, then you need to do 2 numbers at a time and then bring down the other number with the answer from the first 2, and that's what I'm doing here. So let's go through problem number 18. At the beginning, I am only going to look at the first 2 numbers. Negative plus positive. Subtract in your head, right? That's what we learned. That's going to give you 21. Who had the bigger absolute value? It was the negative, so it's negative 21. Then you bring down the third number along with it. And you take a look at what do we have now. We now have a negative plus a negative, don't we? When both numbers are the same sign, you will add in your head, and that's why the final answer is negative 67. Now, if you want to switch the order of the numbers, remember the commutative property? When the problem is all addition, you can switch everything around to however you would like to do that. Some kids like to do the negative numbers together first because you add in your head, and then they'll do the negative and the positive at a later time, at the end, to then subtract in their head to get the answer. You can see it's the same answer either way. So you have the choice, guys. You have to decide today. Do you want to switch the order so that way you do the two negative numbers together first, if there are two negative numbers, and then do the negative and a positive at the end? Or do you want to just go left to right? It honestly doesn't matter. Both ways will work. On number 19, I just went left to right. When I have a negative plus a positive, I subtract in my head, and the answer is negative because the negative number here, the negative 9, had the bigger absolute value. But then, when I have a negative plus a negative, which is what I have here, once I have negative 7 plus negative 31, then I add in my head, and I get negative 38. All right, I want you to now hit pause on the video. I want you to do the next 3 problems on your own, because I think you should now get the hang of this. Hit pause, do these 3 problems on your own, then hit play when you're ready to see how you did. Okay, I hope you have done that. Number 20. If you went left to right, then you're going to have to just listen to me when I go over it after I go over it this way, because what I did here is I decided I wanted to do the 2 negative numbers together first. So I didn't really have to switch the order. I kind of just had to kind of group these numbers together. That's technically the associative property, isn't it? Are you allowed to add in any order you want? We should know you're allowed to. The commutative and associative property basically has already told us that. So I added the 2 negative numbers together first. That gave me negative 50. Then I did 53 plus negative 50, subtracted in my head. The answer is positive because the 53 has the bigger absolute value. For those of you who just went left to right, if you went left to right and you did the 53 plus the negative 25 first, that would have given you 28. And then 28 plus negative 25 would have given you positive 3, the exact same answer. So that proves you can go in any order you want. All right, number 21. I switched the order so that way I could have the 2 positive numbers together first, because I thought that was pretty easy to do, right? Add 2 positive numbers together. It's like elementary school, you just add, right? So that would give me 36. Then from here, 36 plus negative 76, they're different signs, subtract in my head, and that would give me negative 40. If you did not switch the order, then 19 plus negative 76, that would have given you, forgive me, I don't have it here. I'm doing this in my head right now off the top of my head. That would give me negative 57. Yep. And then negative 57 plus 17 would give me negative 40. Same answer. It doesn't matter which way you do it. All right, number 22. I switched the order and I grouped things together. So I wanted to do the 2 negative numbers together and I wanted to do the 2 positive numbers together. To me, that's the easiest way of doing this, because then you're doing all your adding in the beginning, right? Because when you have same signs, like negative 5 plus negative 83, that would give you negative 88. You add it in your head. We all know 42 plus 28, you add in your head, you get 70. And then at the end, I have a negative plus a positive. That would give me, I subtract my head, and I get negative 18. If you didn't do it that way, if you just went left to right, all right, negative 5 and 42 would have given you 37. 37 and 28 would give you, I believe, 65. And then 65 and negative 88 gives you the exact same answer I have here. Forgive me, I can't speak. And that would give you negative 18. So the bottom line is you can put this in any order you want. As long as there was addition symbols on the original problem between every number, you can switch the order to however your liking is to do these problems. All right, that concludes the guided notes on adding integers. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time.